Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Killer Dan. So, for today, the 4th of July, I thought I would talk about something movie related, of course. Even though technically the movie I'm about to review has something to do with World War II, at least to some extent. I know the whole thing with 4th of July, Independence Day, and all that jazz. It's kind of my way just trying to sneak in a war movie and just kind of combine the two things here, I guess. But I don't review war movies all that often to begin with, like at all. And I've done it before, just more like on a some occasion, I guess, because war movies aren't really my cup of tea per se. And I mean, yes, I understand to being a patriot and all that. Sure, I'm not against that. Sure, fine. It's just war movies aren't exactly my forte, but I've watched quite a few of these war movies before, and yes, before anyone says anything, it's quite obviously the more low budget stuff. And that's generally the type of movie I like to watch. The really, really low budget stuff I would watch regardless of genre. And even though it's typically a specific genre I might review from, but I just thought it was just an excuse to talk about a war thing, at least to some extent, to whatever extent, I guess. I'm just squeezing for this day as a way to celebrate it since a lot of people talk about it. I mean, yes, I know I'll go talk about it more than new ones, how a lot of people might want to, use this as a way to talk about politics, which I'm not exactly against, really. But as long as we can be civil about it, we're gonna be act like humans and treat people with human decency. I don't. If you want to talk about politics, be my guest. Just don't be yelling at each other and misrepresent certain politic topics and whatnot. I mean, I'm all for it if you do it, in a civil matter, of course. All right, yada yada yada. The movie I'm gonna be talking about today is. All right, yes, it's this movie I'm reviewing. I literally just got this to review, of course. I watched it not that long ago, really. So I just figured, okay, I guess I would just do it now. I was gonna save it for later, actually, but I'm like, nah, let's just do it now. Fuck it. But anyway, with that being said, let's get the barbecue started and get all the hot dogs you want, because, because as usual, of course, yes. Let's just talk about the plot, shall we? Like I always do. So yeah, in this movie, of course, yeah, kind of obviously it's gonna be like a World War II kind of a thing. And in particular, was this, I guess, this Allied victory in World War II, marking its turn in the North African campaign. And I guess you could say, well, the movie does depict some specific battle, but there was that I reckon. But anyway, but yeah, made with the cooperation with the Italian army, the film is told through a company of the 185 Division, of course, commanded by this one individual, this general. The inexperienced, I guess, assistant here is here by his brother, the sergeant. And yes, of course, this also this seasoned veteran, quite clearly. And they have to do their own thing. They have their own job they got to do here. World War II drama about this well, 1942 North African battle between the Allies and the Axis powers is basically what is, is going on here. Fought between the Axis powers led by the Germany and individual, and yes, the Axis for on the Allied forces, primarily the British, I guess you can say, also including the Australians or Aussies, I should say. Excuse me if I'm butchering that. Whom, by the way, were threatened by the Japanese to have their supplies cut off. That's like a little tidbit for you. But anyway, there's also these New Zealand individuals, South African, and Indian troops as well that were involved. Just to name a few, quite obviously. So yeah, there's a whole bit when it comes to this kind of a thing. Yes, those heavily detailed accounts when it comes to this kind of a thing during World War II, which marked a significant turning point in the North African campaign. And this battle took place in the late 1942 in Egypt's western desert. It fought between the Axis powers, again primarily the German individual, at least one of them, someone with a strong influence, quite obviously, and the Allied forces again. Yes, like I just said a moment ago, and mainly the British armed forces, at least to some extent anyway. So yes, prior to the battle, yes, there was a whole bit where the Axis powers aimed to seize control and access the Middle Eastern oil supplies. So there was like a whole bit there, quite clearly. And yes, those are some kind of strategic strategies that had to be taking place quite clearly because Germany really needed the oil supplies greatly because in what Hitler wanted to do. And yes, he wanted to do things fast. And yes, we all know that Hitler himself was not really a great strategist whatsoever. He wanted to just do everything quickly. And which, yes, heavily backfired because of his impatientness. I mean, yes, I know that's oversimplifying it, which it is. I agree with that. But there was some victories that pushed the Allies back across the desert, creating this kind of a this preconditioned situation, this moment. However, the Allies regrouped and prepared for like some kind of, I guess, really just counter counter offense kind of a thing that they had for a while. So yeah, it was like a whole turning point, like I was saying. By November, the Allies had broke through the Axis defenses. The victory was, of course, a very important thing. Forces, so when somebody's forces to retreat, the Axis suffered significant loss as a result of this, quite clearly. And yeah, just again, like I said, this is going to be more of a drama war movie. Yes, quite clearly, there's going to be explosions, stuff blowing up, shooting, bang, bang. Yeah, that's going to be there, quite obviously. It's a war movie, so that kind of thing is required. That has to happen, quite clearly. But yeah, but the thing is, it's more going to focus more on the drama, the interaction with the individuals. And this is an Italian production, by the way. So it's an Italian production movie. Just throwing it out there. So I just thought I would just make that real quick. I mean, to be technical, this film was this international co-production between Italy and France, which yes, France did have play a major part during World War II, right? And the Italian government did suicide eventually. Pretty much towards the end of it, but again, a little tidbit for you, just to give this more context, so you know what I'm talking about here. But yes, even though the movie is depicting a specific battle in a specific era during World War II, but it's not. So don't be coming here expecting to go in like the whole documentary like about what Hitler or what the Japanese had done. No, it's not gonna be about that. Even though it is taking place during that period of time, it's just focusing on a specific battle in a certain place. That's all I'm trying to get at. You know, with all this soldiers, this food soldiers being sent to a certain area, and so on and so forth. Of course, when it comes to this battle, those the whole thing with its legacy. The tide has turned, so to speak, I guess, because the idea here is supposed to highlight how strategic planning, leadership, and persistence can actually change the overall outcome of a conflict. It remains as a symbol of Allied resistance and, of course, a turning point in World War II. The opponents combined with the efforts, especially when it comes to the eventual defeat of the Axis forces in North Africa. So there was that, and of course, considering the fact it's supposed to be about drama and the human life, quite clearly, and that's what the people behind this film were trying to aim for. I mean, yes, like I said earlier, folks, this is a really low budget film, so don't expect this to be like this Steven Spielberg or George Lucas kind of a production because it's not. But that doesn't bother me really, yeah, because I just got accustomed to watching this type of movies. I do enjoy watching this like low budget stuff anyway, so it doesn't bother me too much. Not really, but that's just me though. That's just me, quite clearly. So yes, this is one of these types of movies I wanted to review for this special day. For one reason, because considering what's going on, the July 4th and whatnot. I mean, yes, I don't have a specific movie talking about July 4th. At least not at the moment to speak about. So I just figured I'll just talk about this as a way to just speak about something adjacent to this day, I guess to some extent, I suppose, to whatever extent and whatnot. This seems like a pretty good excuse for me to do this. So anyway, at least I thought so to begin with. But anyway, I just thought this would be a good way to talk about, just talk about war and whatnot, because give you a little bit of history here, very clearly. Obviously, I'm aware of the fact that we're restoring events that led up to these events, to what had occurred in this whole desert-like area. Quite clearly, I'm not ignoring that because there was a whole bit where before this specific event, the Allied forces had launched this operation in November of 1942, which was the Allied forces' invasion of French North Africa. This campaign was aimed to secure North Africa and opened a second front. The victory at this place did help to frustrate this invasion as it weakened this excess defenses in the regime. The excess objection was to have their troops aim to seize control of a certain place, which was vital for Allied supplied routes, like I was saying earlier, folks, and to threaten the Middle East oil areas. And yeah, there's gonna be some kind of danger with that if the enemies got what they wanted, and someone had to be stopped. But wouldn't this mean even if the Japanese got what they wanted, at least to some extent, wouldn't it mean the this make it more difficult for the Aussies and the Nazis to progress for what they want to do? I mean, yes, of course. Nobody, that's like nobody would have won in that case, at least for them anyway. So yeah, so we made it more complicated. That's like how a strategic move when it comes to this kind of a thing. Yes, there's like a whole history behind this, quite clearly. I mean, don't expect me to just go over every little thing. I'm just going to give you a general view here in regards to this movie. Just to give you some kind of idea what this movie is trying to aim for and whatnot. And I know with some of these kinds of movies, it's not always 100% accurate. But then again, like, it's like, okay, to what point? How much can you fit in a movie without making it seem overblown? Quite clearly. So yes, even the best accurate World War II movies, there's still gonna be some stuff left out anyway. And I mean, that's not to be lazy about. You do have to do your research when it comes to this kind of thing. When it comes to making movies, you have to actually do some research. You'd be surprised on how many people don't know that. You have to do your research. You absolutely, even if you're writing a script, you must do it. You don't want to come out. You don't want to come off like a pompous ass and not know what you're talking about. And there's plenty of people like that already. Even in this day and age, you'd be surprised. But yes, even when it comes to making a movie, you have to do your research. Because contrary to probability, you can't just press the record button and just call it a day. It's not that. No, it's not. You can't just be like that. I mean, you could, I guess. You want to do like an amateur hour kind of a thing. And there's plenty of those. But yes, when it comes to making movies, you do have to do a lot of course, research. Quite clearly. I'm just throwing it out there, folks. Again, you'd be surprised how many people don't know that. It seems really weird if you ask me, but yet here you are. Yet here you are. But whatever, guys. Anyway, as I was saying, yes, this was definitely one of those types of movies that's supposed to be looking into these characters quite clearly. It's an Italian film kind of a thing going on here, and that's fine, I guess you want to say. And the military action in this movie is actually pretty good. I like the military action that was portrayed in this movie. There's going to be explosions and whatnot, shooting, bang, bang, and all that, just as mentioned earlier. Yes, that's still going to be a thing here. That still exists here quite clearly, even though it's going to focus on the human drama quite a bit throughout the entire thing, which I'm pretty fine then with, because you do need to express how these people are, well, people. But there was quite a bit of action in this one, folks. This movie was, like I said, it was a co-production between the Italian and French kind of a thing. Which okay, that's pretty cool. Um, it does have a lot of good cast. The cast members actually do a really good job acting out the roles as should have clearly. So when it comes to that kind of a thing, I did like how the cast members were playing as their characters. Of course, it's supposed to be based upon the actual people and whatnot, sure. But when it comes to the action sequences, they did a job even there. It was well edited, it was well produced, this kind of a thing. And yes, the individuals when it comes to this kind of thing, when it comes to the acting, they did a good job. They did a good job in that. Even doing the action sequences, they did a real good job in regards of that because they trying to make it believable. Well, as much as they could anyway. But despite the limited production in this movie, quite clearly, and I did like how it was showing the all the action, and I guess trying to make it not too over the top, not trying to make it too outlandish. I guess trying to make it seem, I guess, realistic. Again, as much as the production will allow, because again, this is a limited budget film after all. You do have to keep that in mind. But okay, so there was that. The director spends some time focusing on the officers running the battle to the outlines the of the big picture, and of course having some kind of historical thing and whatnot. And even if you want to argue that maybe there's some bit of a fiction story in it, that doesn't mean you can't have some real life thing in it, and that's fine, quite clearly. And there's also this one whole character who's supposed to be like this inexperienced young officer with a lust for an adventure, even if it means putting his own men in harm's way. There's that. And of course, we're going to see the characters given their own personality. And I like that. I like the fact when it comes to the script did allow for these characters to have their own personalities, like their own backgrounds and whatnot. That's a good detail there. The actors do a good job in regards of that when it comes to portraying their personalities. That was really nicely done. That's good. That is much appreciated, quite clearly. That is definitely needed there. I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that at all. And anyway, but yeah, this was pretty well made, of course, in that sense. So that's some credibility to the to this kind of stories that the director again does spend some time, a great bit of time focusing on the situations within both the British and the German high commands. So that's definitely something. And those characters could have their own personality as well. The actors will portray their kind of a thing as well, which is needed. And yes, there can be some dramatic scenes and whatnot. So there's that quite clearly. That is highly appreciated when it comes to that kind of a thing. Quite clearly. Yes, the director does focus on the German situation and these maybe really cool scenes in the film and trying to depict how the even the Germans may have their own thing going on, contrast to everyone else. Clearly, trying to show some really good scenes with all the characters, like everyone involved, to have some good scenes with everyone. So yes, there was that. Yeah, so some good amount of scenes that took place in some kind of underground com, uh, bunker kind of a thing. And yeah, that was definitely supposed to be a well captured kind of thing and look really realistic, at least to some extent. At least the people behind this were trying to make it realistic as possible because, again, given the limited production involved with this kind of a thing. So that's something I reckon. But anyway, I just want to throw that out there, like, quite clearly. And that is pretty much really appreciated, quite clearly. Anyway, and yeah, there was this whole thing with this incompetent general who makes some poor tactical error decision, which results some kind of. Well, I live with that. I'm not going to spoil the story too much, really, at the end of the day. But yes, quite clearly, there's lots of key military tactics when it comes to this kind of a thing. You do have to keep in mind when it comes to the defense and death, quite clearly. Because, yeah, there were certain forces out there that relied on heavily layered defenses, mines, minefields, and artillery, making it difficult for some tanks and troops to walk through. Use of intelligence at the time, the Allies improved their intelligence gathering, including code breaking efforts, which allowed them to, I guess, decode the Axis movements and make a more plan more effective counter attacks. Those are the whole thing with the deception operations. Because the Allies did employ deceptive tactics such as dummy tanks and yes, misleading radios traffic to conceal the timing or location of the main attack. Those stuff like that becomes these kind of tactics when it comes to this type of fighting. You do have to keep in mind that this kind of thing is a very dangerous situation. And yes, if it sounds stressful, if it sounds very dramatic, if it sounds pretty wild, pretty out there, that's because it is. I know going to war is not for everyone. It's not for everybody. And yeah, if it sounds stressful, if it sounds really dramatic, if it sounds like really scary and whatnot, that's because it is. I know. Again, that's undermining in a way because that's oversimplifying it, but it is something that's not made for everyone. Quite clearly, when you think about it. But when you're making these types of movies, you do have to portray that to various extents, and you can do it in various ways. As long as you get the idea of the cross, I'll be fine with it quite clearly. And yes, you do have to tell a good story, and I do think that this movie does tell a pretty good story as a whole. At least I thought so, anyway. I did think that the story as a whole isn't too shabby, all things considered, quite clearly. I did think that way that this movie was trying to set its story and whatnot was just pretty good in that regard. Look for telling a story is what matters, quite obviously. You do have to have a good story. I mean, you do need to present the facts and whatnot, but you still have to tell a good story anyway when you think about it. All right, let me just wrap this up because I know I'm just ramming on and on about this, but as a whole, I can say that this was actually a pretty good movie. I thought it was well made. Again, given the fact it's low budget, the action sequences are made pretty believable and gripping because the characters embodied in them. The film's opening is a sequence depicting the ambush of some kind of Italian artillery company in which the director makes the most of the camera work. It's well choreographed. I can definitely say it's very, very well choreographed. I'll say that. The opening sequence. When it comes to the opening of any movie, yes, obviously you do have to make sure you capture the audience right away. And it can be tricky at times because there's so much information you could get across, and it can really mess it up quite easily if not handled correctly. And that's the thing, though. You have to make sure it's well executed when it comes to this kind of a thing. Again, it sounds like the most obvious thing ever, but you'd be surprised on how many people don't know that. But anyway, moreover, the action sequences, even in the beginning, does a really good job. Of course, the opening sequence, is filled with pan shots, zooms, and quick cuts, and that's pretty good. Of course, there'll be gunfire and whatnot, dirt everywhere, and several soldiers will die. Of course, that's gonna be part of it. This is a war we're talking about here. Quite clearly, that's definitely gonna be a thing. And yes, that's definitely something I want to talk about when it comes to these types of movies. Guns will be used. I mean, it depends on what era you're talking about. You ever want to make it more accurate, you gotta make sure the guns in specific era does match up in this kind of type. Again, yes, I know that's like no shit, Sherlock, but again, you'd be surprised how many people don't know that. He has to be accurate with the era, even with the weapons, with the guns, the armor, and whatever you can think of, the tanks, the outfits that soldier, the foot soldiers wear, the general soldiers, you name it, and all that jazz. War is a part of history. War has always been a part of human history, whether you like it or not. It has always been a part of the thing. It is there and always will be there no matter what. Again, whether you're against war or pro war, war has always been a part of human history. It's just always been. It will never leave. Whether you like it or not, it's always there. And yes, you know, make some arguments for both sides quite clearly. Uh, yeah, I know there was the whole anti-war thing going on in Vietnam and whatnot, but anyway, I'm not going to really talk about if that's necessary or not because I'm not going to talk about Vietnam. I'm going to do it in a separate video if I want to. If I wanted to, maybe I should do some Vietnam kind of stuff. That's another war kind of thing I don't discuss all that often either. Really, I do know that a lot of people like World War II. Like a lot of people, World War II was like their favorite war, and Vietnam's kind of viewed as a bastard child to some extent, I guess, for a lot of folks. Again, I don't want to get too much into that really because that's like an entire discussion on its own. Anyway, coming back to this movie, I thought it was well made. Again, given it's cheaply made, but still, I didn't think it was too shabby, all things considered. Anyway, I'll give this film an overall rating of a 7.1 out of 10. It's a 7.1 out of 10 for me. As always, thanks for watching, and take care. Until next time, see you.